What's up, guys? So today we're going to talk about a subject that a lot of people at some point in their career are going to do, and that's asking for a raise. This is something a lot of people have asked me about, and this is something I actually have some personal experience with since I've asked for a raise a few times in my career, and I think all but one time I've actually gotten the raise. I think the best way to describe or the best way to explain when and how to ask for a raise is just by giving you a personal example from my own career. There was this one time where I was unemployed for a little while, and I got this job offer at a digital agency, and they said they wanted me for AngularJS development. AngularJS is what I was doing at the time. It was kind of my specialty on my resume. Most of my jobs were AngularJS. So they reached out to me. They said, hey, we need an AngularJS developer. If you want to come on, we got a lot of projects for you. What do you think? So did the interview, all the normal stuff you'd expect. And I took the job, and on the first day, like literally the very first day, I'm not working on AngularJS. There's basically no AngularJS projects in the company at all, and I was working on Ember. So right away, I get into this job when they said, hey, we want you to do this, AngularJS development, and no internal projects. And it's a digital agency, so if you're not familiar with it, you're doing work for a bunch of clients. You're doing work for mostly big brands who just don't want to build stuff themselves, so they hire an agency to do it for them. And all of the projects internally were basically all Ember apps, a framework I'd never used ever. So on top of that, like my first or second day on the job, I'm working on some of these projects, trying to pick up Ember, kind of pissed that I was misled about the job. But the first or second day on the job, I'm told that I have to be on this conference call like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So immediately I'm like, okay, I'm getting a ton of red flags here. You guys misled me about the job, and on top of that, I'm already doing after work conference calls, like not something I really signed up for. Fast forward a few weeks later, I'm essentially running front-end development for this entire company. I'm not even a full-time employee either. I'm a contractor. I'm just somebody they hired to do a few projects. I think I was on like a 3 or 6 month contract at the time. And like I said, a few months in, I'm running all of front-end development within the company, and I'm basically the in-house expert for front-end development on frameworks I'd never used. As time passes, I've been at this company for like a month or two. I'm now working like 70, 80-hour weeks. Internally, management is horrible. We have more projects than we really have resources to work on them. So since we didn't have resources, it was basically on me to do a lot of the work. So I'm working all the time. I'm working more hours than I've worked at any job in my life up to now, like still the most intensive job I've ever had. And I finally got to the point to where I was like, okay, I've had a few things add up here, and I think I'm in a position to where I can actually ask for a raise. I think this is the time where I can go up to them and say, hey, I think I'm being underpaid. I think you need to pay me more. And it's not an easy thing to do. Like asking for a raise, there's a reason most people don't do it. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not comfortable to do it. You're basically saying, hey, I'm undervalued here. I'm being underpaid. You need to pay me more. So after a month or two of 70, 80-hour weeks, I was like, okay, I have to ask for a raise. I'm in a position to where I think I can do this. And just to be clear, this was the first time in my career up to this point that I'd asked for a raise. I wrote down a few things. Like, I think that's important. If you're thinking about asking for a raise, write a few things down. Like, what are the bullet points that you think make the case for you? And for me, the first one was they misled me. They told me, okay, you're coming on to work as an AngularJS developer. I had emails for proof, which, by the way, this is also an out for me. Like, if this didn't work out, I didn't think it was going to negatively impact me or my resume or my references, because if I go to my next role and they say, hey, you were only here for like a month or two, what the hell's up with that? I could show them emails and say, they hired me for AngularJS and I came in and did Ember, and that's just not what I wanted to do. And I think if you sell that to a future employer, they're not going to hold that against you. I think they'll understand. Okay, you were misled, completely understandable that you didn't stay there that long. So I had an out. That was the first thing. I knew that if things didn't go well, I had an out. Second was I was working more hours than I expected. When I was in the interview, they sold this as like a very chill, we're an agency, we work hard, play hard, all that normal bullshit. So they didn't say like, hey, just so you know, when you come on, we have a lot of projects. It's going to be a little intense at first. They didn't tell me any of this. They made it sound like I would be working normal 40-hour weeks, maybe get off early on Friday. So they not only misled me on the type of work that I would be doing, but they also misled me on how much work I would be doing, which started immediately. Like I said, it was the first or second day, and I'm about to leave work, and they say, hey, can you do a conference call at 8 or 9 o'clock at night? I'm like, what? And then the third thing was that I had way more responsibilities than I anticipated. Not only was I essentially the sole front-end developer in the company, responsible for all front-end development for all projects, but on top of that, I was also teaching designers how to design. Because a lot of the designers, through no fault of their own, it's not like they were bad. They were actually pretty good designers, but they just weren't as familiar with responsive design. So they weren't familiar with, CSS frameworks like Bootstrap, where you have, a desktop website, and as it collapsed down to mobile, you have to know how everything kind of stacks together in a mobile way, a responsive way. So not only was I doing my job, doing front-end development, but I was also kind of teaching them how to think about design, how to think about the desktop experience, going down to tablet, going down to mobile, and this was new information for them. So at that point, I'm like, okay, you misled me, not only on the type of work that I've done, but also how long I would be working. I'm doing way more than I thought I would, not only in terms of hours, but also in that I'm training other employees. I'm teaching them how to do their job. At that point, I'm like, okay, I think I'm good. I think I can honestly make a case for myself that I deserve a raise. Now, when it comes to asking for a raise, you have to think about what it is that you're actually asking for. Because when I went to go ask for the raise, with all of the bullet points I listed, I'm essentially undervalued. Like, if I knew that I was going to be running front-end development, working with a framework I'd never worked with before, teaching designers responsive design, I wouldn't have given them my original rate. If I knew I was going to be doing that much more, I would have had a much higher rate than I initially gave them. So when I went to them and said, hey, I think I deserve a raise, I think you need to be paying me this, I actually meant it. I was being underpaid. I was undervalued. I had more responsibilities than I thought I was going to have, and given those responsibilities, I could honestly say to them, if on day one, if I knew this is what I was going to do, I wouldn't have told you that number. You guys misled me. There were a lot of details that you didn't tell me, and as a result of that, I need to be paid more. This is not worth my time. I'm doing way more than I thought I was going to be doing, and in order for this job, working 70, 80 hours a week, to be worth my time, I need to be paid this. And this is something that a lot of people, when they send me messages, they ask me about this, they'll ask me, well, how much should I ask for? Like, what should my raise be? I don't know. That's not a question you ask somebody else. That's a question you have to ask yourself. What is your time worth? Like, if you're going to ask for a raise, you're essentially saying, I'm being underpaid. What I'm doing right now isn't worth my time. So if it's not worth your time, you have to determine, what is your time worth? This is like, I can't tell you how many times this has happened to me. I tell somebody, they say, oh, I don't think I'm getting paid what I should. I'm like, well, ask for a raise. And they say, well, how much should I ask for? I don't know. What's worth it for you? Obviously, what you're doing right now isn't worth it. So what number makes the current state of your job worth it? Nobody can answer that question but you. You can't ask somebody else. You can get a rough idea, like what's the market in your geographical region, what are senior developers being paid. In general, you can get a rough idea. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, this is not worth my time. What number would be worth my time? And then ask for that. There's no playbook like, oh yeah, 15%, that'll make it worth it. No, you have to determine that number. This isn't something you can ask somebody else. The other thing you have to keep in mind when you're asking for a raise, like I said, it's a number that makes the job worth your time, is that when you ask for that raise, you have to mean it. I had somebody come up to me one time, they said, hey man, I asked for a raise, I used some of your advice, I didn't get it. And then I asked them, all right, so what are you doing now? And they said, well, I'm still working at the company. No, you can't do that. If you're going to somebody and you're asking them for a raise and they say no, and your response is to go right back to your desk and keep working, they're never going to take you seriously. They know you're a pushover. They know they don't have to give you a raise because you don't mean it. It's really just a nice to have for you. So if you're going to ask for a raise, you have to do it with the intention that if they don't give it to you, you're quitting, you're leaving, you're putting in your 2 weeks notice, whatever it is. You can't go and ask for a raise, and if you don't get it, still show up the next day, because they're never going to give it to you. It's never going to happen. So if you're in a position where you think, okay, I'm being underpaid, I would like a raise, I think I deserve one, you have to go through those bullet points. What is it about your current role, what is it about your current responsibilities that makes you think that you're being underpaid? And with that information, you present it to them. I've given you some of mine. I gave that one example. Misleading role, more hours than I expected, helping designers learn how to do responsive design. All of those things, to me, made a pretty good case for deserving a raise. And it's not going to be the same at every job. So when should you be asking for a raise? It's when you think you deserve it. When the work that you're doing is no longer worth the amount that you're currently being paid. Like at other jobs I've had, when I've asked for a raise, it's been for different reasons. It's not like you're going to have this checklist where you can look and say, okay, there's 5 items, okay, I have 3 cross off here, okay, now I can ask for a raise. Like I had to come up with those reasons myself. I had to think about, okay, when I interviewed for the job, what were the expectations, what's the current reality, and then do the difference between those two and use that as negotiation to say, this is why I deserve more. There's not going to be some clear-cut answer of when the exact correct time to ask for a raise is. It's when you think it's the correct time to ask for a raise because what you're doing is no longer worth the amount that you're being paid. Just like the amount that you should get with the raise. You can't just ask somebody else in the industry who's, a few years ahead of you, how much should I ask for? They don't know. What is your time worth? So if you want to ask for a raise and you think you're going to ask for a raise, go through back to day one, what you were doing, and then compare that to what you're doing now and come up with the differences there. And then with those differences, see if you can make a case that says, hey, this is what I'm now doing, and with these current responsibilities compared to what I was doing back then, I think there needs to be some compensation in place. I think I need to be compensated accordingly because of the new responsibilities, the new roles, and the new things I'm now doing. Because if I knew all of this back then, I would have asked for the number I'm asking you for now. That would be my best advice on when and how to ask for a raise. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like so that other people can find this. And if you want to stay up to date on my future videos, click the subscribe button. And if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to leave a comment below. I respond to all of your questions and comments. Thanks.